Everyone, good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's live stream covering Hurricane Milton. We'll be getting the 8 p.m. advisory here pretty soon. We did want to get live this evening because obviously since last night's live stream, a lot has changed. Milton, as you've seen probably on our Facebook page and posts and different things like that, now a Category 5 storm. This has been an absolutely record-breaking hurricane that we've seen here. It now has sustained winds of 180 miles per hour. The Hurricane Hunter aircrafts have been flying through this evening, and we have gotten them to see pressure. They have seen that all the way down to 898 millibars. So this really is historic that we're seeing here with Milton this evening. And there is still a period where we could even see this intensify through this evening. So we're going to be keeping an eye on that. National Hurricane Center definitely has been putting out a lot of updates on this evening. So definitely a lot to talk about. If you're just joining, though, be sure to hit that like, share, and subscribe button for me here on the live stream. Share this out with family and or friends that may be in the Florida area that may be watching this as well, and we'll kind of go over a lot of different information here this evening. We're going to talk about evacuations, we're going to talk about impacts, we're going to talk about the track, and all of those things we'll be talking about this evening. So let's kind of dive right into it. This see Hurricane Milton weaken as it moves across Florida. That is going to happen. So we're not expecting, the 175, 180 mile per hour winds that we're seeing right now to move entirely across Florida, into the interior of Florida. Will it be a major hurricane at landfall? Yes, there's really growing confidence that even with the potential for a weakening storm as it approaches the coast due to a little bit of wind shear and possibly some dry air ingestion, that we could see some weakening of Milton before it reaches the coast. But again, that's not a guarantee. This storm here, I don't think really, yes, we were seeing this in the models where it would get down to 900 millibars. Even 2 days ago when we were doing our live stream and we were looking at some of the different models like the H model, the HWRF, and the HAFS A model, for example, well, those were indicating that this could get down to what we're seeing today. So the models have been doing a fairly good job. And so, the trend is your friend, like we say. And so we could see that weakening potentially take place. We'll have to see the timing of how far north it goes. When does that cold front and that wind shear appreciate? Now, the other thing, yes, it may weaken the storm, but again, we're talking the reason that wind field is going to expand is in a sense because of that shear and motion and different things like that. It will cause the wind field to expand out for Hurricane Milton on the day, Wednesday, and into Thursday as it crosses Florida. We're also starting to see in the forecast it slow down a little bit. We were thinking previously a landfall on Wednesday. Now that has been pushed back to late Wednesday into early Thursday morning, with it exiting the state by Thursday evening. So let's take a look here again at our update here. We should be getting a new advisory coming in here any minute from the National Hurricane Center. We're just waiting on that to come in. And again, as soon as that comes in, we will bring that 8 p.m. advisory to you guys. Here we go. We have the advisory. So central pressure in the eye of Milton has now fallen to a near record low. It is down to 897 millibars. 897. It was at 898. Now it's dropped another millibar down to 897. Winds remain maximum sustained at 180 miles per hour. There's no changes with the watches or warnings with this advisory. And the storm surge warnings, hurricane warnings, all of those do remain in effect. So again, pressure down slightly to near record 987 millibars. Winds remain at 180 miles per hour as of the 8 p.m. advisory. It is still moving off to the east as well at approximately 10 miles per hour off to the east. Those of you that are commenting in the chat, thank you so much for commenting. Unfortunately, I do not know Spanish, but I do appreciate you participating in the chat with us this evening. If anyone is watching that does know Spanish, feel free to chime in on the chat there as well to convey the message. But peak storm surge forecast. Let's take a look at this here. a lot to take in, and this is going to be a life-threatening situation for many people along the west coast of Florida, and we're expecting those hurricane force winds to really begin as early as Wednesday morning into early afternoon, and then continuing through the day on Wednesday. As it does, we are kind of seeing that slowing down trend there along the west coast of Florida. So definitely going to have to keep an eye on that. Another threat that we have is the rainfall potential. So here's the latest rainfall potential. Again, we're looking at some areas here that could be seeing upwards of 8 to 12 inches of rain here, in even in northeast Florida, around the Jacksonville area and points south there. Even Orlando, 4 to 6 inches, a wide swath, potentially 6 to 8 inches, including the Tampa Bay region as well. And a good portion of 4 to 6 inches for pretty much all of central Florida there is expecting that to be the case here. So let's take a look here at our view here of Milton. And we'll come here to our... I mean, look at this. This is just unbelievable. Just look at that eye. And northern Yucatan's already starting to feel the impacts here of the outer bands here of Milton. Now, let me get this here for you guys. Okay, so obviously Tropical Tidbits is having look here at this convection here, we can see just this symmetrical eye wall, pinhole eye here. And it's interesting to note also these new bursts of convection out ahead of it, just showing us that Milton just continues to strengthen. It's already been setting records now with the pressure down to 897 millibars, nearing record of Hurricane Wilma. And just so you guys are aware of just some of my personal experience here with Wilma, is that I lived down in South Florida from 2002 to 2008. So I remember Wilma very well. Obviously, it wasn't a Category 5 when it hit us down there in South Florida, but just these October hurricanes are just absolutely record-setting, it seems like, with Michael 6 years ago and now Milton here this week, and potentially breaking those records of Wilma as well. So we're really going to see, I think this could continue to strengthen. We're seeing a little bit of it. Almost seems like we're going to see these eye wall replacement cycles really over the next 12 to 24 hours. And it's going to be interesting to see how close this gets to the northern coast of Yucatan, really right here, kind of where it juts out. It has had that mostly eastward movement, but it ever so slightly, every now and then, kind of wobbles to the south. Now kind of on the last few frames, wobbled back to the north. So it does have those small changes with it as it is moving here past the Yucatan Peninsula. Let's go to a wider view here of the Gulf of Mexico. And here's the current thinking. So we're expecting it to maintain Category 5 status at least through tomorrow. And then once it starts making that turn here off to the east-northeast and then eventually toward the northeast, heading toward the Tampa Bay region on Wednesday, if you look here up in southern Mississippi, southern Alabama, and southern Georgia, you can see these clouds here kind of moving from north to south, even here across Texas. Well, that's a frontal boundary that is moving in. That's that wind shear that you probably have heard folks talking about, that we are expecting this to continue to move to the south, the hurricane to move to the north, and to begin to interact with that wind shear a little bit more. Right now, it's actually acting as basically a venting feature here. You can see that is allowing, that really, in a sense, aided in the rapid intensification that we saw today. So, definitely going to be a very interesting 24 hours. And we're already seeing, in association with Milton, some of this heavier rain here already across Florida. And I think we're going to see a little bit more, especially tomorrow, with more of this precipitation forming out ahead, kind of some of these banding features with this venting. We're going to see that precipitation increase across portions of Florida through the day tomorrow. We'll probably have a good bit of venting and precipitation coming in to Florida through the day tomorrow. Now let's take a look here at some of our computer models, kind of see what the latest and greatest in a sense with these are that we're seeing. And we're going to come here. We'll start with some of our ensemble models. Let's look at the European. Let's come here. And let's zoom in. And let's come here southeast. So this is the European ensemble model, and we can see it brings it in basically just south of Tampa on Thursday morning. So that's one ensemble run, which again, that would be phenomenal. And that's kind of interesting to note here. That's the 12Z, yeah, it's our latest. Interesting to note here how it actually, if you look at the last couple frames on the ensemble, it almost looks like it right there, it curves it and then shoots it really more east across Florida, and even keeps it south of Cape Canaveral as it goes across. So that is definitely something to keep an eye on. That's the Euro ensemble. Let's take a look at the GFS ensemble. And this kind of combines multiple models all into one. The GFS basically brings it right over Tampa and then has it a little bit further north, which is more the thinking on that. Okay, so let's come here. Let's go to more into the specifics. And let's come here. And let's kind of track this out. Wow. Look at that. It actually re-intensifies even off the coast. And I think that's why they've issued even these hurricane watches now for the east coast of Florida, is specifically because we are expecting it to re-intensify even after it goes through Florida. So really, the worst, I think, is going to be pretty much Crystal River south toward Punta Gorda for the storm surge, including Tampa, really over toward Lakeland. So that stretch of the I-4 corridor, I think, is going to see the worst of the impacts here from Hurricane Milton, assuming it takes that track where it goes just north and west of the Tampa area, basically the eye wall coming right in around Clearwater and those areas. So that's the Euro. Let's take a look here at our GFS. Kind of curious what this showing. And typically I'm looking at this on Tropical Tidbits, but their website seems to be down right now. Yeah, so again here, this one again brings it in north of Tampa and then crosses over. So this is, Thursday, basically midnight. This is right around midnight, 2 a.m. on Thursday morning. So overnight, which is, again, overnight hurricane landfalls like this is absolutely the worst time, especially when it comes to the storm surge, because it's dark. So again, that's why you've got to evacuate if you live along the coast. Take those evacuation orders seriously. If you're in an evacuation zone and you've been told to evacuate, just do it. Get inland. You don't have to come all the way up here to Georgia per se. If you want to, that's fine, but do what you think is best for you and or your family, right? Even if you live along the West Coast and you evacuate down to like Miami, the impacts in Miami are going to be a lot less than the impacts right here along the West Coast, or evacuating inland to, the Lakeland and Orlando area. I know a lot of people typically will evacuate to those areas when we have a storm kind of coming in from the west like we do. So do what's best for your family, but really all evacuations are going to need to be, you're going to need to be in wherever you're going to ride this thing out by really by Wednesday morning, because that's when those conditions are really going to start going downhill, is Wednesday. So we were thinking initially 2 days ago, we were thinking this was going to be making landfall on Wednesday morning, but we are expecting it to not go quite as fast as we were thinking previously, which in a sense is the good news for evacuees and trying to get out. You still have time to make that evacuation happen. If you live really down here, any of these counties here on the west coast of Florida. Speaking of evacuations, I want to kind of check back in here on our traffic cameras, see what I-75 is looking like. So yeah, as you can see here, really crowded moving north, but folks are making their way out here at about 8:30 at night. So that is the good news. I really like to see that traffic is still moving, although it is slow. So be patient, but the evacuation, I feel like folks are actually, taking those evacuation orders seriously, and hopefully they will continue to do so. So it is going to be quite an interesting next couple of days there across Florida, and we'll kind of have to keep an eye on it and see what happens. Let's see if we got any others here. Here's another one. I-75, yeah. So a lot of movement there. That's mile marker 340 there, looking northwest there. So love to see those cars continuing to come north. Also, if you are evacuating, make sure that you have your hurricane kit with you before you leave for evacuation. So that includes things like any medicine. If you've got pets, you've got pet food, especially if you're staying in one of the hurricane shelters there in Florida. Make sure you have your supplies with you. So this is really going to be one of the most impactful storms to hit the west coast of Florida. Really, I mean, this could be the storm of the century. It definitely has that kind of potential to it, with the storm surge, with the winds, with the flooding. And I think the other thing that's really, you have to think of Helene just brushed by this area 100 miles off the coast of the Tampa Clearwater area, and look at the storm surge that it had, over 8 feet of storm surge. I mean, boats pushed in Treasure Island, boats were in people's front yards, and it didn't even make landfall in that part of Florida. Milton, completely different story, has made landfall there in Florida, and it is absolutely breaking records. I mean, really the only thing that stands between it and the record will be Hurricane Rita from back in 2005, which had a pressure of 895 millibars. So that is now making Milton the second strongest hurricane ever in recorded history in the Gulf of Mexico. So definitely one here that we're seeing for the record books, taking us all by surprise here. Again, recapping the 8 p.m. advisory, maximum sustained winds remain 180 miles per hour. Pressure down to 897. Just 2 millibars away from tying the record with Rita back in 2005. Still moving off to the east at 10 miles per hour. And here's the latest forecast cone that we can see here. Again, making landfall right around midnight, 1 a.m. on Thursday there, just at or potentially north of Tampa, and then moving offshore by Thursday afternoon. Still hurricane warnings here all the way up through Jacksonville on the East Coast, because we are expecting those hurricane force winds to literally move across the entire Florida peninsula here through central Florida. So again, if you are in inland, right, if you're in Plant City, Orlando, you need to be prepared for hurricane force winds. Now, the further west you are, and closer to places like Tampa, St. Pete, that area, your winds are going to be higher than, say, further east in like Orlando. So definitely something to keep an eye on. Zach says, seems to have slowed. Are we thinking it will slow even more? There is that potential, Zach, that we could see it slow more. It's really going to depend on once that interaction begins with that front and picks it up and starts moving it northeast, which is still the current thinking that will happen by tomorrow afternoon into tomorrow evening. We'll really start seeing that speed move a little bit quicker than what it has been right now. But there is the potential that this timeline could get pushed back a little bit more. It has been trending that way the last 12 hours. We've seen that. We were thinking a landfall Wednesday around noon, and then it was Wednesday, around 3 and 8 p.m. And now, as of the 8 p.m. advisory, we're looking at a overnight landfall, which again, as I mentioned, is a worst case scenario really for the West Coast, because dark, pitch black, anyone that hasn't evacuated, you're not going to see that storm surge come in along the West Coast if this thing does make landfall after dark, which again, it is looking like. I don't know exactly what time sunset is down there in the Tampa Bay area, probably close to 7:30, 8 o'clock, I'd imagine. Maybe a little bit later, but with this thing coming in after dark, and that storm surge, now I will say this with the storm surge, we'll start seeing the storm surge probably as early as Wednesday afternoon. It'll start coming in once that water here, kind of where you see 1 p.m. Wednesday, we'll see that surge of water start to come in across portions of the West Coast. But really, as we get closer to landfall, those water levels will then really just start rapidly rising up to that 10 to 15 mark there in that where that storm surge warning is. And let's go over this storm surge inundation map kind of in detail a little bit, so you kind of see what we're looking at here. So we're going to kind of start south here. So here is Naples, Florida. So just for reference here, the blue is a foot or more, the yellow 3 feet above ground, the red 6 feet, the orange 6 feet, and the red is 9 feet or more. Unfortunately, it doesn't show us if it's like 15 feet. But you can see down here, look at all this, the red area where we could be seeing that storm surge of 9 feet or more down here in the Punta Gorda, Fort Myers, Sarasota, much of Tampa Bay could see that storm surge. So folks, again, east of Tampa in the Plant City and Lakeland, storm surge isn't going to really be a threat for you. Your main threats are going to be those 100-mile-per-hour plus winds. There potentially the flooding rainfall if you have any rivers or lakes near you. Obviously, there's a lot of lakes here in Central Florida. A lot of those are going to flood, as well as the river system that kind of flows here out of some of these lakes through Florida. So if you live along a river, going to be seeing a lot of flooding. We're going to also see a lot of urban flooding on streets, under overpasses. Could see some pretty historic urban flooding in these areas where the drainage isn't as fast. And also, obviously, widespread power outages, a lot of structural damage, tree damage, well inland with this storm is going to be likely with a landfalling major hurricane here along the West Coast. And I will say this, with as crazy as everything's been here really the last day and a half, with how this has just completely gone berserk and just coming up on shattering pretty much every known record to man, I wouldn't be surprised if this doesn't weaken as fast as maybe they're forecasting, and is similar to, you know, like a Charlie situation where it comes in as a 4. Dad's over to St. Pete, scary for sure. He's on the flood zone X though, so okay, it's a bit higher ground. Yeah, and that's important to again know what your zone is here. And you know, they have all these different zones here, and I dropped a link to this in the description of the video, so folks can definitely come on here, type in your address, and exactly be able to see what your flood risk is. And you have to think here too, it's not only just on the bay, you can see this huge area, but it's also some of these rivers and tributaries that can cause flooding inland and upstream as well. So, I mean, man, where my college was here, Clearwater, I mean, that, I think that whole little peninsula there is going to just be completely underwater with this thing. Clearwater Beach, I think is going to be under feet of water. Really, all of this here, down especially toward St. Pete, a lot of this area is low lying. We're talking elevations of, you know, some of these places literally are only maybe 10, 12 feet above sea level. So that is definitely concerning for these areas, which is, again, why these evacuation orders have been issued for much of the west coast of Florida, just because it's so low lying out there. Even these barrier islands, there is some elevation, but it's not like, where it's, 100 feet of elevation above sea level. So it doesn't take much to cause the storm surge. And when you're talking storm surge too, that's the water level rise. That's basically if the sea was calm, how high would it rise? What do you have in the ocean? You're going to have waves on top of that. So if you have a 10-foot storm surge, but then you also have, say, 15 or 20 or potentially even 30-foot waves that are crashing on top of that, that just compounds the problem. So that's the other thing folks don't always account for is, yeah, they may account for the storm surge, but you also, if you live right along the immediate coast, you have to account for the wave action on top of the storm surge. So if the storm surge doesn't get your house, it could be the wave action, that pounding surf for hours and hours and hours that destroys the structures that are right there along the coast. And that's oftentimes what we see with a landfalling major hurricane like this is, especially further inland, is that it can actually be, wave action. Once the storm surge comes in and wipes out the first, those further inland structures can get then destroyed by the surf and the pounding waves. So I think, unfortunately, we are going to see somewhere here along the West Coast, still too early to pin down exactly where, but somewhere along the West Coast, we're going to see some absolutely just devastating and heartbreaking scenes from Milton as it comes ashore. So just really praying that, it will weaken, and it will weaken more than expected. The shear will come in strong, and it'll be better. But hopefully everyone down there is prepared for a worst case scenario, because that's really the best thing you can do is prepare for worst case, hope for the best, and again, just do what is right for your family. So, know what your risk tolerance is. Here's a view of kind of what I was talking about earlier, kind of showing you where this dry air here is up to the north, across, southern Louisiana and the Florida Panhandle, Milton down here, obviously. And what the current thinking is as this moves here off to the east and then to the northeast, is this area here will kind of try and basically and train in on the southern, southwest side, and then kind of on the southern side here as well, that there will be that wind shear and a little bit of dry air entrainment, which will weaken Milton as it closes in on the coast. But again, the weather, we try and do our best, forecasting and thinking, here's what could happen, here's what might not happen. But at the end of the day, it's really out of our control as to what the end result is. All we can do is warn people and make sure people are prepared for the potential of life-threatening situation here. And again, like I mentioned earlier, it's kind of interesting, even ahead of this with the venting, seeing this area of precipitation here, kind of just off the southwest portion of Florida here, even affecting the Keys. And then really keeping an eye here on this section here of Hurricane Milton, with this deep convection now starting to form. That'll eventually wrap around Milton, and we'll start to see this potentially grow in size through the day, late tomorrow into Wednesday. I think we're already starting to see it a little bit here, even in just the last 6 hours. Starting to see that size just ever so slightly, just it expand, and that's going to be something that we're going to continue to see here as it moves off to the east-northeast. But wow, just a unbelievable satellite view there of this historic Category 5 Hurricane Milton right now here in the southwest, south central Gulf of Mexico, just on the north side of the Yucatan Peninsula. So, all right, let's take a look here at some of our models here. This is what we've been doing the last couple nights. We got tropical tidbits back up here, so I do kind of want to do this again. So this is our new 18Z run for Milton that we have coming out here. And I'm going to make this full screen here for you guys. Check, check, check. Okay. So let's step forward through time here. This is the HWRF model. So obviously we know this was from earlier. We do see it kind of maintaining that near 900 millibar intensity. And then still around 915. But starting to weaken slightly on late Tuesday. Still 934 on Wednesday. 934, then 940. But notice, don't focus on the millibar pressure. What I want you to notice here is the size of the storm. And even here, down here on the southeast and eastern side, seeing this, because there's also going to be a tornado threat as well as this comes in. So look at these red and yellow area here, how compact that is on Tuesday. And then notice by here, look how much bigger that area is by Wednesday. Yes, the pressure has risen a bit, but the size of Milton has also grown, and it just continues to grow. Look at this by here. This is coming into Thursday morning, and I mean, this thing here now is just massive. I mean, we're talking the southern side of this intensity here all the way down to really down here toward Fort Myers and Punta Gorda, and then stretching again all the way up north of Tampa to Crystal River, and then just the west coast here just getting lashed on overnight on Thursday. Even here well inland, I mean, look at this intensity here, well inland, even before the eye wall makes landfall. And then it weakens here again, coming in on the north side of Tampa, weakens as it moves across the state of Florida. And even here up near Orlando, I mean, we're still talking pressure of 949 millibars that far inland. So, I mean, again, this is going to be one where it could maintain that major hurricane intensity, 50, 60 miles inland before it really starts to weaken further inland. So that's the other thing. Like, yes, if you live inland, you may not be worried about the storm surge, but you could be easily dealing with winds over 100 miles, sustained winds over 100 miles per hour, even well inland from the storm here with Milton. All right, so let's look here at our HMON model. This is another one here. So the HMON model, again, brings it on the north side of Tampa, which puts Tampa on that east side and northeast side here as it comes in, potentially bringing that devastating storm surge there on the HMON, and then coming in and still, again, a very strong hurricane even here over Orlando, Florida, by Thursday late morning. This model here, the half A model, this is the one that we saw where we saw 2 days ago it showing us a Milton getting down under 900 or right around 900 millibars, which obviously now it has. So this one here, I feel like as far as the intensity has gone, it's been one of the better performing models with as far as regards to pressure. So keeps it pretty small, as you can see here, through the first part of Tuesday. And then here on Tuesday night into Wednesday, we start seeing, especially here on the northern side, a lot of more precipitation and banding coming in. And then it begins to grow in size as it approaches. You can see here this ring of intensity there as it grows in size as it approaches the west coast of Florida. And then coming ashore here, pretty much this one here, bringing it right in to the Tampa Bay area on Thursday morning, and then moving more easterly and kind of coming out here closer to the Cape Canaveral area. So again, the exact track is still anyone's guess as far as where exactly it comes in, and does it move more northeast? Does it kind of come in and then hang a right, kind of like what we saw with something like a Hurricane Charlie as well. So, and then let's take a look here at our half speed model, see what this one's showing. So half speed, bringing it in just pretty much right over the St. Pete area, and then right over Tampa. Again, this is about 2 a.m. Thursday morning, so middle of the night. Absolute disaster moving across, weakens it, and then comes back out into the Atlantic. But even look here, while it's moving across Florida, and this is why those hurricane watches are up. Look at all this wraparound moisture with those potential for hurricane force winds here, even on the east coast of Florida. We are still expecting this to be a hurricane all the way through the state of Florida. That is definitely something that we are seeing as a likely scenario. GFS model, bringing it in here, right in, again, just on the north side of Tampa Bay, pretty much right into Clearwater, and here through Pinellas County, northern side of Pinellas County, into Hillsborough County there, bringing Tampa and points east here. Look at this tight gradient, and that's where we're going to see those sustained hurricane force winds here in this tight gradient. Kind of as you get further out, it'll be that tropical storm gradient. But again, I wouldn't be surprised with the wind field expanding on this, that when it makes landfall, we see those hurricane force winds maybe as far as 50 miles, 40 to 50 miles out from the center of the storm, especially on the northeast side, the east and northeast side. And the GFS maintaining a stronger hurricane, literally moving across Florida here, pretty much right on top or just north of the Orlando area there on Thursday morning at about, 8 a.m.? Probably about 8 a.m. there, Thursday morning, and then moving it off of the coast. So definitely a concerning situation here with and so this infrared satellite's not gonna show up. Okay. It's missing all this data. I don't know why it's missing that data on the 18Z. Yeah, tropical tidbits obviously having a couple issues with some data missing, as you can see here. So, but regardless, we are going to be. This is going to be a big one, folks. I mean, I really don't know how else to put it for you guys. West coast of Florida, I think, is going to there's going to be a path of just catastrophic devastation somewhere along the west coast of Florida. And I think there's also going to be a pretty significant inland path of damage, in some places significant. I think it's going to also be interesting seeing what the tornado threat will be on Wednesday, especially ahead with those outer bands. I mean, with Helene, we saw over 200 tornado warnings with Helene just a week and a half ago. And I think Florida, we're going to see a little bit of a similar situation, especially with the structure changing of it, with that eastern flare-up of that outside with those feeder bands. Definitely going to have the threat for tornadoes. And again on Wednesday, let me get to the right thing here. You can see here that slight risk for severe weather already issued here by the Storm Prediction Center in association with that landfalling tropical cyclone. So obviously with major Hurricane Milton, it is forecast to move along the west coast of Florida Wednesday evening before moving offshore the east coast of Florida by Thursday. And there are going to be some tornadoes that will accompany convection within the rain bands of Milton. I mean, this is nothing that isn't unheard of, having these rain bands bringing the threat for tornadoes with these landfalling hurricanes. So again, this is a multifaceted system that brings a lot of threats with it. It's bringing flooding threat, which I think that is going to, in a sense, potentially be an underrated threat. With as flat as Florida is, with as much urbanization as there is across Florida, I think we're going to see a lot of urban street flooding. I think we'll see a lot of river flooding like we haven't really seen in Florida in the past, with this inundation of tropical moisture. And I think the flooding is going to be so bad because of the amount of rain that Florida's already had here in the last 2-3 weeks, from just days of rain with Helene, what we saw with Helene, with the flooding and the storm surge, and just the amount of saturation that the soil has. There's really not anything left for the ground to absorb. So, it's not going to take much for some of these areas to have significant flooding Wednesday into Thursday. So make sure that you're prepared for that as well. So if you're inland, even make sure that, if you live near a body of water or you're in a low-lying area and your home begins to flood, that you have a plan in place, or somewhere that you can go if a flash flood warning gets issued for your area. Because we do see this where we'll have, the river flooding, and it can go from, just normal flooding to an hour and a half later, having record-setting flooding. I mean, even here with Helene, the Yellow River and someplace, I mean, there was flooding there like I haven't seen since I've lived here for 15 years. I mean, some of these rivers can quickly rise 15 or 20 feet, above their normal flood stage. And that can put entire neighborhoods underwater, inland, away from where the storm makes landfall. So that is definitely something that folks that are evacuating need to keep in mind as well, is where are you evacuating? Are you near a body of water? Are you in a flood-prone area in inland Florida? Not just from storm surge, but from rainfall. We're looking, 6 to 8 inches for a wide area. That's a huge amount of rain. And we could obviously see localized higher amounts than that if any areas receive banding or training rainfall over the same area, say for 3 to 6 hours. You can have some places easily get a foot of rain or more. It can happen. It's happened before, and it is definitely potential to happen again. So, but again, we'll keep you guys updated. Please, if you live along the coast, if you live in an evacuation zone, and they have ordered an evacuation for your evacuation zone, don't risk it. This one's not one that it's worth to risk and be like, oh, it's never as bad as they say. I'm just gonna stay. Even if it's not as bad as they say, great. We all hope that it's not as bad as they're saying, right? Obviously, we don't want it to be as bad, but I would hate for someone to be like, oh, it's not as bad as saying, and then this is the one time that it actually is as bad, right? Or potentially worse. So take those evacuation orders seriously. Know your route. Whether you're staying with family or whether you're trying to get a hotel, make sure you get that booked ahead of time. Also, for folks that are evacuating north here into Georgia and or the Carolinas, be mindful that places in southern Georgia, especially Valdosta, southeast Georgia, are still recovering from Helene, so there are going to be very limited options. If that's what you're choosing to do, you'd probably want to get to Macon or north, for evacuations. Another great option for evacuations is honestly the Florida Panhandle. Really, like Panama City West should be fine with this because of that dry air that we were looking at earlier, right? Let's see if I can find it. This here. So the Western Florida Panhandle, again, another great place to evacuate to, depending on where you live. And, just again, do what's best. Do what's best for your family. What you think is best for your family. No one knows your situation, your risk tolerance better than you. So do what you think is the right thing for you. But you really are running out of time. You've got maybe another day and a half at most to make that decision, depending on where you live. I do think the evacuation traffic will still be heavy tomorrow, going north on 75 and the Turnpike. Even on 95, I've seen a good bit of traffic in some places. So we wish you guys the best. Thank you for tuning in this evening. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up tonight's live stream, and we'll continue posting updates throughout the evening, throughout the day tomorrow as we can on our Facebook page. Definitely plan to do another live stream tomorrow evening as well, giving you guys updates, but we'll see what happens with the next advisory, which will come out in about another 2 hours around 11 o'clock and overnight. But just absolutely a remarkable 24 hours that we've had here today with Milton going from a Category 1 to a Category 5 in 18 hours or less. It's just absolutely phenomenal. So thanks for tuning in, guys. Be sure to subscribe if you're new to the channel. Thank you, and we'll see you guys on the next live stream.